What's a better way that school owners need to be educating parents? Because I think we all can go, well, yeah, I wish more parents knew that. Is there a specific way that we can help bridge that gap that currently exists with parents understanding?
Understanding child development gives that elevated value to the why behind not only what you provide for their children, but also helps the parents understand that they're in good hands. When you can explain child development in a way to parents that just wows them and positions yourself as an expert, you don't just become another option, you become the only option. And that's a game changer.
If a school owner is sitting here and going, oh, this sounds great, but what's my first step to articulate this to parents that I engage with?
One of the things that I teach through my Pediatric Ninja Specialist intensive course is it's called the 4 S's for children, their needs. They need to feel safe, they need to feel seen, they need to feel supported, and they also need to feel secure.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jennifer Waters podcast. I'm here today with my special guest, Melody Johnson. I'm so excited you're here today.
I am too. I love hanging out with you and talking.
Yes. We're going to have an incredible conversation. I want to give a little bit of background for those of you who are new here. Maybe you haven't seen Melody, you haven't heard from her before. She runs SKILLZ Worldwide. And the thing that I absolutely love about Melody is she helps school owners develop and implement age-based skills curriculum into their school. And it's all about the science of how do we work with kids based on their age and their neural development as well. And recently got this amazing certification. You said you were like one of the first ones to really get this thing coming out, right?
Well, not necessarily one of the first ones, but I know that I'm one of the first ones who've done both the online version and the in-person version. It's the interpersonal neurobiology certification.
It's incredible because I know how much work you put into it and all of the things that it really helps you understand about kids' brains and how they develop and just humans, just how the human brain is. So we're going to get a little nerdy here on this conversation, but really you get to be a fly on the wall because I just want to pick her brain about stuff. And so that's what we're going to do today. So obviously I work with school owners all the time that are wanting to grow their schools. You know, originally started martial arts and now we work with all kinds of different schools, music, dance, extracurriculars, etc., private schools, micro schools. What do school owners need to know about why it's so important to really cater to the developmental stages that children go through when it comes to how they sell their programs to parents? Because you and I were talking about this a little earlier.
Yeah, and there's no one size fits all when it comes to selling programs to children because children do grow through unique stages based on their age and grade levels. You know, for example, we have preschoolers, then your early elementary schoolers, which are your kindergartners, first graders, then your elementary schoolers, which are your second through fifth graders, fourth grade, and then of course you have your middle schoolers. And between each unique stage of development, you're going to see different characteristics, different personalities, but also different needs from the parents. And it's not just their grade level thinking intellectually. You want to look at them as a whole. So understanding what their needs are physically, intellectually, emotionally, and socially, and those things are changing today now more than ever.
Do you think that it's really important to educate parents on these changes? That's the understatement of the century. I guess what's a better way that school owners need to be educating parents? Because I think we all can go, well, yeah, I wish more parents knew that. Is there a specific way that we can help bridge that gap that currently exists with parents understanding?
Well, think about it this way. If you don't understand child development and behavioral science and neuroscience, which neuroscience is not as complicated as what you think, then you just become a me too when it comes to extracurricular activities for children. So parents may say, oh, we're going to try out soccer, and then we're going to try out baseball, and then we're going to try out martial arts. And it all gets compiled into like this sports extracurricular. Martial arts specifically is in a unique position to help children become the best version of themselves physically, intellectually, emotionally, and socially through martial arts training.
Yeah.
But even if you're running a tutoring program or you're running a dance program or a music program, understanding child development gives that elevated value to the why behind not only what you provide for their children, but also helps the parents understand that they're in good hands. When you can explain child development in a way to parents that just wows them and positions yourself as an expert, you don't just become another option, you become the only option.
Yeah.
And that's a game changer.
Yeah. That's something that I talk a lot about is, you know, if you imagine just drawing a circle in your area and then you just put a bunch of little dots in that circle. Most school owners just try to make their little spot bigger. Like, how do I make my spot stand out more? And what you really want to do is not even be in that circle at all. You just want your own circle, and you can put number 1 there, and that's you. Yeah. Right? You're completely unique. So you feel like this is a huge separator for the schools that you work with that are actually incorporating this into their sales process.
Even just like my son's 11, and we hang out with a big circle of families because of soccer and flag football and all the extracurricular activities that my son is in. And when they say, so what do you do? And I explain it, they say, well, do you have anybody that you work with in this area? Which we actually do. It's the Ninja Academy. And in other words, there are parents who I have conversations with, just even in my community, that don't know that they need this until they hear about it. And then, so that's when you talk about circle and you try to make your circle bigger, this is stepping outside of your circle. If you're really good at this in your sales and your marketing presentation, which you guys are really dialed into, you're going to capture a market who didn't even know that they wanted to put their child in your program. Right. Or you weren't even a thought.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're standing out so big. Absolutely. And you're tapping into that need. How would you explain this to somebody if a prospect came in and, a lot of our schools, like martial arts, whatever, a lot of people will come in because they want their kid to focus better. Let's just say that. So let's give our audience an example of, like, how can we help that parent understand that it's not just that their kid doesn't want to listen or is being defiant, that there's actually something else going on from the things that you know and that you teach.
So we'll use a certain example. Like, a child who doesn't focus is probably a child who has attention issues, right? Yeah. So because they go hand in hand. So then we think about children who have ADD. And really, attention deficit disorder is that the part of the brain where attention control really maximized is not very strong. So if a parent says, well, my child doesn't really know how to focus and I need them to focus better, great. We have lots of drills where we integrate neuroscience into those game-based learning drills that help them develop attention control, which is the ability to stay on task for a task and complete it. And when you say things like that, the parents go perfect. Instead of, I'll make sure that they say, yes, sir, they say, yes, ma'am, make sure their eyes are on me. Those are very surface level. So when you can go underneath and explain not just the why, but the how, it's a game changer in your sales presentation.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I think it also ties back into when that parent then maybe wants to leave later as well, right? Like, they're saying, I think we're going to take a break for a little bit. We're going to go to something else. Because you're here at the live event this weekend, and that was one of the things new because every time you speak, I'm always like, okay, what am I taking in this new? Because I'm always learning. That's one of my core values. And I was like, oh, that's a good one. So when the parent is like, hey, I think we need to take a break right now, you were talking about, what's your plan? Like, what do you mean with that?
Specifically for the parents who give into the child who resists to come to the extracurricular activities. I have a son. It's not very hard to get him to go to soccer practice or football practice anymore because we've done such a good job. But I remember back when he was like 8 years old and he was on his iPad and he's playing a game and it's like, hey, buddy, it's time to get ready for soccer practice. And he doesn't want to, obviously, because he's dialed into the game. So we get a lot of parents who, when they pull their child out, it's because they've lost that battle. Like, their kid just wants to stay home and play video games. They're giving them a really hard time going to the studio, whether it's your martial arts studio, music studio, or so forth. Then I ask them, what's your contingency plan for their physical hygiene and their social hygiene, especially like martial arts specific, right?
Yeah.
Let's use martial arts and dance, those types of things. Yeah. Oh, my child doesn't want to, he's giving me a hard time. He's always playing his video game. He just doesn't want to do it anymore, so I'm going to pull him out. And you ask the parent, what is your contingency plan for their physical and social development? Because if they don't get that, those unmet needs are going to continually escalate in these big behavioral signals that you're going to have to try to figure out how to fix down the road. So, and one of the things we talked about today in the 7-Figure Dojo Live is that the modern child is very different than children were 20 years ago. Yeah. They are in a physical deficit, vestibular proprioceptive, which is balance and understanding space, because they're not in the playgrounds, they're not riding their bikes, they're not doing those things anymore. They're in an intellectual deficit because everything that they do on their video games, the iPads, the speed of processing, all of that part of the brain is escalating, but the long-term memory, the working memory, the auditory processing is very limited. They're in an emotional deficit because now their amygdala is hypervigilant, because of all of the stimulation they have. So they have bigger emotional outbursts. And then more importantly, they're in a social deficit because most of their communication is via text, especially preteens and teens, text messaging. I was explaining how I was at dinner the other night, and we saw this well-dressed, great-looking family come in. We're like, oh, look at them getting ready to have a nice, cute dinner. And a couple of minutes later, look over, and the little girl's on her iPad, the kid's on his phone, and both parents were on their phone.
Yeah.
So they're not just in a social deficit with their peers, but with their parents. So if they're going to pull them out of your school, especially a school that is very well versed and very well trained, and not only how to explain how neuroscience applies to child development, but how to integrate it with intent, and the parent says they want to pull them out, then what is your contingency plan? Because right now we are the glue that is keeping them together. Not just the glue, but we are the solution that's helping them become better than the average child their age and put them above their stage of development with the strategies and techniques we use. And a parent's going to say one of two things. They're going to go, what do you mean contingency plan? And then you can dial into it, right? Or they're going to say, I don't care. But let me tell you something. Every single parent cares about their child's physical, intellectual, emotional, and social health. So they may say they don't care about it because they're embarrassed, but it's going to be in the back of their brain when they leave, which again goes on to the next thing we talked about, which is why you want to constantly be educating your audience and your community, especially if they're on your email list or they're still following your page, to educate them all those things on the benefits, the why behind your program, so that down the road they go, yeah, I need to put my kid back in because I do see that physical deficit, that lack of physical hygiene, the lack of social hygiene, and now I need to get them back in.
Yeah. When you're looking at age ranges, I know that that's really important whenever you're trying to teach a child something, not just to go, one size fits all. Right. We're going to teach everybody the same thing. What do you think that people need to know when it comes to these age ranges and what is actually happening to a child when they're learning at these age ranges?
Well, I'll keep it very fundamental. So the first age group in most children's extracurricular activity starts in preschool, right? So you want to understand that physically they have very low tone. So you're going to see weak muscles, not very good balance, definitely no proprioceptive abilities, which proprioceptive is like jumping from the couch to the chair, or catching a ball. If you try to throw a spiral football to a 3 or 4 year old, they're going to catch it with their face. So physically, intellectually, they have very limited vocabulary, so they learn by observing. That's why they mock other kids. So if I said, Jennifer, I want you to go over there and demonstrate this, and all the other kids see you get up and move, then they'll move. So intellectually, they have a hard time processing just verbal commands. Emotionally, they're more dominant emotion is going to lead. And then socially, they mock each other for interaction. So then you have your early elementary schoolers, which is your kindergartners and fifth graders, kindergartners and first graders. Now they have a little bit more balance and their proprioceptive is a little more developed, but that doesn't mean that they're going to excel right away. They're just now starting to develop that. Emotionally, they build a lot of their confidence through making their role models proud. So at that age, you're going to get a lot more interruptions when they connect something with something else. Like if I say, stand really strong like a dinosaur, you're going to get, oh, Miss Jennifer, dinosaur. I have a dinosaur at home. I have a dinosaur coloring book. I have dinosaur underwear, And then socially, they're me first. So they always want to win. If you ever tried to play Uno with a kindergartner or first grader, you know what I mean by that. You give them a draw 2 or draw 4, or they lose. You see these big outbursts. But then when you go into elementary school, which is like your 2nd through 4th, 5th grade, you're going to see more vestibular proprioceptive balance, and now their fine motor skills are starting to develop. That's why, like, for example, 2nd graders back in our day was when we started writing cursive. I heard they took cursive out. But I don't know if you knew this, but there's a movement now to try to get cursive back in there. So their fine motor skills are just now being developed, so they're not going to look as technically proficient as 5th graders, 6th graders, and so forth. Intellectually, you're going to see them overthink about something because their brain is now starting to dial in, so that leads to a lot of mistakes. Emotionally, they're pretty good. Socially, they want fair play, so this is the year when they start tattling. So you can see where I'm going with this, right? And then middle schoolers, this is where the adolescent brain and body are transitioning into an adult. So physically, you're going to see a lot of clumsiness. You're going to see a lot of what appears to be lazy, which is just their body's exhausted.
Super tired.
Between that middle school age, range, what their body is going through is like taking 3 high-intensity training classes back to back to back, like an Orange Theory class.
Wow.
That's how tired they are. One of the proofs I have of this is I went to this event one year with this, and one of my little buddies, he was 10, and I have a picture of me holding him up upside down when he was 10. Then I saw him 2 years ago, and he's 6'2". and he's 14. So in 4 years, he went from being shorter than me to 6'2". So you can imagine
crazy.
physically exhausted, but yet we look at preteens and teens and say they're lazy.
Yeah.
Intellectually now, their adolescent brains transitioning into an adult brain, so that starts from the hippocampus forward. So they're highly intelligent with like math and science and facts. That's why they have the "Are you smarter than a fifth grader?"
Yeah.
But the prefrontal cortex is under construction because more energy is going to the back of the brain. So you're going to see a lot of mistakes in executive functioning. So they're going to make a lot of bonehead choices. Why did you eat that Tide Pod and put it on TikTok? Those types of things. Emotionally, they're all over the emotional spectrum. So one day they can be in a great mood. One day they're going to be in a bad mood because cortisol, a pain inhibitor, and also a growth hormone suppresses their moods. So you're going to see that. And then socially, they're trying to figure out their identity. And usually they're labeled as bad kids, dumb kids, because they make bonehead mistakes with their role models and their parents and so forth. So they tend to lean into their peers. I just gave you a huge crash course, but you can see what I mean. There's so much.
There's a lot.
And that's just, I do master classes an hour long on each one. But it's the tip of the iceberg to give you to understand that what you should expect from a 3 and 4 year old is significantly different than what you should expect from a preschooler, significantly different from early elementary school. Right when you transition from preschool to early elementary school, it's a big difference. And then when you get into the regular elementary and middle school, there's all different ages and stages.
I think that a lot of times we aren't just trying to get out a marketing message of, hey, we can help your kid. It has to be something that's more tailored to that specific age group and how we're going to be able to help them. But the parents seem a bit resistant sometimes when they're not educated in a way that they can understand. So if a school owner is sitting here and going, oh, this sounds great, but what's my first step to articulate this to parents that I engage with? Do you have any tips or anything that will help them?
Yes. So one of the things that I teach through my Pediatric Ninja Specialist intensive course is it's called the 4 S's for children, their needs. They need to feel safe. They need to feel seen. They need to feel supported, and they also need to feel secure. Well, parents need that too. So if you're doing a message, I can help your child, immediately they're like, there's nothing wrong with my child. They can get defensive. So to help them feel seen, does your child do this, or have you seen your child do this? You're not alone. This is every parent has this issue and when you say it in a way that drops their defenses, it's easier to get them to lean in. If you're like, if your child does this and you should be doing this, it's same concept and same intent to educate the parent, but they're both coming from different angles.
And so by taking them through something where they feel like, oh, this is more educational in nature, and oh, I'm not the only one who's also dealing with this, other people are dealing with this, it creates that safe space for them to then start leaning in and start to understand
Just think when you read your message, because especially people who use AI to try to get the messages at first.
Yeah.
I was saying my thoughts on AI is that it's such a contingent communicator. So it basically tells you what it thinks you want to hear. Yeah. So it's going to get you a good framework, but then when you read it, say, as a parent, would this make me feel safe? Does it make me feel seen? Does it make me feel supported and also secure? Then your message is on point.
Amazing. And so as school owners are trying to implement this or develop this into their schools and get, let's say they have been kind of going old school, right? And then they're like, they have the aha moment, the lights shining, all that good stuff. If you're a school owner who's going from, I am strict structure, it doesn't matter how you feel in this moment, how do you just make this pivot? Is it all at one time?
It really depends on how fast you want to make changes, right? And I don't like to use the word change, because then you don't feel safe. And you don't feel seen, because you're like, what am I doing wrong that I have to change? So it would be innovating your approach and your programs to target the needs of the modern child, because the modern child is very different. And I love the old school strategies. You and I grew up old school. Just so you know, I started martial arts in the Dungeon Dojo days in 1987 with Mr. Slaughter, who was an ex-Marine, doing knuckle push-ups, and I became a rock star student. I love that, but I'm not a modern child. Yeah. Right? The modern child today, their nervous systems are elevated because, as I mentioned in my opening today, that we are going from the first play-based generation, which is the previous generation where the majority of the time that kids spend is playing, to now a device-based generation. This is child therapists. You can look it up. Everybody is saying children spend more of their time on their devices than they do playing.
Yeah.
And what that means is that their nervous systems, their brains are wired very differently. So for a school owner to say, I need to transition from the old school to more modern methods, it's not because of what you're doing is wrong or not effective. It's just that there are better, easier ways and ways that can get better results faster. So really depending on how fast you want to go, it could be as simple as just listening to this and now being mindful and making those connections. We talked about that. That's like level 1. Level 2 would be grabbing books on child development and trying to understand the modern child. Any book by Dr. Daniel Siegel, like The Whole Brain Child, is a very innovative book that really starts to dive into it. Level 3 would be to like make one small adjustment into the framework of how you talk with parents based on understanding neuroscience and behavior. And level 4 would make 2 good adjustments, or level 5 is go all in. So you pick your number, and then you go from there.
Out where to go from there.
Obviously, if you go level 5 and you go all in, you're probably just like a bow and arrow. You have to pull an arrow back, before it can go further.
Yeah.
Obviously, at first, you're going to feel like you're going backwards. But the minute you get your systems in place and you have the right support, like what you do with 7-Figure Dojo, you're going to see results crazy fast.
Yeah. I think that the hardest challenge for a lot of school owners is first recognizing. So I think by listening to this podcast, maybe we're just going, okay, wait, there is an innovative way to do this. It's not necessarily, like you said, that it's wrong. It's hard to say something's wrong when you don't know that there's an alternative.
Sure.
Right? So, okay, understanding it, knowing it. But I think there's also a decision that maybe that school owner has to make with how they want to proceed forward with understanding the brain and how it works, and not just saying, oh, well, it's this way for this generation. Like, I feel like I don't know how much you get this, but I feel like there's this whole blame game about this generation isn't as smart, or this generation, like you mentioned, lazy or whatever. And it's very, I just feel very different about that. It's not necessarily, yes, culture is different, but to your point, there is something actually different that's going on in the brain.
Oh, yeah. Well, every generation looks at the next generation that comes up and tries to find blame on all their behaviors that they see. Like, for example, your grandparents used to get yelled at for watching Elvis Presley on TV and shaking his hips. And they were like, oh, my God, mortified. Like, so, I mean, and then you had video games, Nintendo and Atari, television, and now iPads and Roblox. Right. So, yeah, with innovation comes great opportunities, but it also comes with a cost. And the cost is that it changes the way that kids' brains work. So the problem is that a lot of people that I talk with when I first start to have these conversations with neuroscience is they blame the kid and they blame the parent. And they're like, well, that's on them. And from my perspective is you can't change them by blaming them. You have to change them by influencing them and helping them, and you helping meet their needs, not what you think they need. And I think that that's where a lot of people have the hard time getting through on, okay, how do I modify the way that I approach according to the modern child? Where do I start? What resources do I have? And then not just, especially the owner. Like usually when I have these conversations, whoever's in charge of the bank account goes, I get it. Yeah, I'm working from a nutrition model if I'm doing old school methods. Let's just say right there, kids, if you're working from an old school model, you're in a nutrition model because most kids' brains aren't wired for the old school model. So then you go, okay, I want to work from a growth model. I got this. I want to do it. But the challenge then becomes getting the staff to buy in, the team to buy in too.
Is there any way that someone can more easily get the staff behind it? I mean, because also you got to think, sometimes there's going to be older people that might also be working in the school, and they're pulling and being like, hey, why are we changing all of this stuff? It worked before 20. So what's the best way to communicate that to the team?
Well, I mean, that's what I'm here for. And I hate to say it, but it's true because when a school owner gets really excited about it and then they go back, like today, this will happen. The school owners will go back. They're going to tell their team, they're like, oh, this is what we're going to do and blah, 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 blah. And the team's like, huh? And then they try to repeat what I say. and they're not articulated on it because it's brand new. It's just like, you go to a martial arts event, you learn a new form, and then you try to teach it to your team. It's not going to be the same level as you learning it from your master who's practiced it over and over again. So your team has to be exposed to these conversations. They have to listen to this podcast. They have to watch videos and see it for themselves to really understand how it works. If it's third-party information, it's not as effective.
And for you in particular, I mean, there's a lot of things obviously that you do in the industry. You got a lot of different programs, you got a lot of different things. What are the things that you do particularly to help school owners? Like, what does that all look like?
So SKILLZ Worldwide has 2 platforms. We have SKILLZ 3.0, which is access to all of the age-specific children's martial arts curriculums, drills, game-based drills that integrate the neuroscience into them, along with the SKILLZ University that has all the online courses for everybody as young as your junior leadership team, that all the way through your adults. And then we have this new platform that I just started on my 50th birthday, which I'm 50 by the way, just so you know. It's called SKILLZ Premier Institute, and it's monthly neuroscience certifications along with advanced certifications. Like, we have a summer camp coaches readiness course that I just launched in May, and I'm doing an encore presentation next week where we go through all the neuroscience of behavioral management, what to do when a child has a meltdown, and so forth. And then the pediatric ninja specialist course, which is 6 weeks of high-level training on brain biology, brain connectivity, parenting, emotional intelligence. I know it sounds really scary.
Yeah,
but neuroscience is not very hard. So I don't know if you heard Spencer today, who is from Caleb's school. They're a 7-figure dojo, superstars, and Spencer's one of his instructors. And they went through the Pediatric Ninja Specialist program this last time, thanks to you, because they heard my presentation in February. So he signed up right away and signed Spencer up. So in brain connectivity, we talk about a lot of behaviors are due to unmet needs. And those unmet needs are they could be hungry, angry, lonely, tired, right? Do you get hangry when you don't eat?
Heck yeah.
Right, okay. most people do. So when kids are grumpy, then, sometimes it's either hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. So Spencer said that this kid was kind of starting to change his behaviors in class before class and during class. He was like, he's just kind of getting a little bit more defiant lately. And then he took the Pediatric Ninja Specialist program and we went through the HALT method. So the next day, he's talking to the kid and he's giving him attitude, and he goes over and he goes, buddy, are you hungry? And the kid looked at him and he immediately goes, yeah. And he said you could see immediately his defenses drop because he felt seen. And he's like, okay, so after class, let's get you something to eat. And then let's make sure that you eat before class because he's growing.
Right.
So he's getting more hungry. And he goes, just me saying, I see that you're hungry, made the kid go, you see me. And now I connect with you. My amygdala is not in stress response under you because you get me. That's neuroscience. That's all neuroscience is. It's just understanding the unmet needs and just being able to connect the dots with the kids in a way that makes them not feel threatened so that you open up their brains to actually learn the material that you're trying to teach.
Because kids go through that fight or flight response all the time.
Kids' amygdalas today, this has been supported by many child therapists in the child therapy community, specifically my mentor, Dr. Daniel Siegel from Interpersonal Neurobiology. Kids today have a more hypervigilant amygdala, which is this downstairs part of the brain that's responsible for signaling fight, flight, freeze, or faint. Am I under threat? That area of the brain, if you look at a child's amygdala under an MRI scan 20 years ago, that part of the brain, depending on the household that you live in, but if you lived in a decent household where there's not a lot of yelling and screaming, that part of the brain is not very lightened. The prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus is. But the average child today, the opposite is happening. Their amygdala is way more heightened and less prefrontal cortex and hippocampus because of they're overstimulated. There's just so much access to devices and stimulation. They're getting an overload of dopamine, an overload of serotonin, and not enough oxytocin, which is the connection chemical. Yeah. That's the social deficit, the social hygiene, and also endorphins, which you get from exercise and movement and so forth. And that's the physical deficit. So physical hygiene, social hygiene, kind of going off script. But when my son's on his device or his phone for an extended period of time, I'm like, it's time for some social and physical hygiene. He's like, let's go. And he loves it. There's not a time where I'll go into my son's room and say, hey, let's go outside and throw the ball, and he doesn't complain. He might say, I'm finishing a soccer game on my playing FIFA, can you give me 2 minutes? But he gets it because then when we go outside and we throw the ball and we play, we ride our bikes, he feels good. So he understands it from that neuroscience perspective. I don't know where we were going with that, but
No, it's the fight or flight, and just how much kids have that experience. I think one of the things that you said that really hit home today is just, as school owners, as people that work with children on a regular basis, we need to be focused on helping to protect these kids, right, as they grow, because of that. And you gave a really great example. I think it'd be really helpful for people. You were talking about the coyote.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's a really great example. So can you share that story?
Sure. So imagine my son, his name's Van, he's 11, and he gets up. Right now we're in summer, and he eats breakfast, gets ready for summer camp, and he goes to the garage and opens up the garage door so that he can leave for summer camp. And when he opens up the garage door, there's this coyote right there looking at him, wanting to eat him and attack him. From a biological standpoint, his amygdala immediately is going to go and fight, flight, freeze, or faint. Like, it's under threat, which is basically his brain doing its job. Like, hypervigilant brains on kids, there's not something wrong. It's that the brain is actually doing its job a little too well. So then my son gets in the car and he goes to tennis camp, which he's in this week. And when he gets out of the car at tennis camp, there's another coyote. Now, just so you know, the coyote is a metaphor. It's not real coyotes. These are metaphors of people that he's, being faced with. And then during tennis camp, all these coyotes are barking at him all day long. And then he comes home, and then there's the coyote in the kitchen, the angry mom in the kitchen. And if this happens to him day after day, week after week, month after month, if you looked at his brain under MRI scan, super hypervigilant amygdala because he's constantly under threat. Mm-hmm. If we change the narrative and Van gets up, has breakfast, gets ready to go to tennis camp, opens up the garage door, and there's this guardian. And I use the narrative of the Rise of the Guardians. Have you seen that movie with Jack Frost, Sandman, the coolest Santa Claus and Easter Bunny? So you have this sprite guardian who's like, "What's up, Van? You ready to have a good day?" And Van's like, "Yeah, let's go." And then he gets to tennis camp, and there's another guardian there, like, "Let's have some fun today." At the Rio camp, all he sees is all these guardians. And then he gets home, and the guardian in the kitchen's like, "Hey, Van, how was your day? Great day. I'm so proud of you." And you look at that Van's brain under an MRI scan, if day after day, week after week, month after month, you're going to see the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus more lit up, and the amygdala not as lit up because of the neurochemicals and the way that the brain is integrated on the child who's surrounded by more guardians. Mm-hmm. So children need more guardians. Now, don't get me wrong, I mentioned this. A coyote, a couple of times a day, builds strength and courage. So there are times where, I want my son to work out or do something and he doesn't want to do it. And I'm like, okay, coyote mom's going to come out now because you have a project to do, or, you have a responsibility that we have to do. Every once in a while builds strength and courage, but a coyote every single day, all day, builds trauma. And it's called, and there's actually a name for it now. It's called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. Yeah. So children who are surrounded by coyotes who are constantly trying to build behavior by threats, coercion, punishment, those are coyotes. Those trigger the amygdala. It suppresses the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus, which is responsible for growth and development, right? It's kind of counterintuitive. We think yelling at a kid and shaming them will help them learn, but those parts of the brain shut down when you're doing that. But children who have heightened prefrontal cortexes and hippocampuses, those are the ones who thrive.
That's such an incredible analogy and really hit home for me as you were saying it. I've heard you, articulate that story, but every time that I see the faces of people, when the first time that they hear that, it's like light bulb goes off. So the things that I'm saying, it's not just the words or the way that I'm saying it, it's also all the things that are happening inside the brain that are then forming these patterns and forming these habits that really impact a kid for life. Yeah. And cool. Well, I mean, somebody's sitting here, they're going, okay, help me put this into place in my school. Where's the best place to find you?
It depends on the platform that you use. If your email, it's Melody Johnson, Melody Johnson's kind of easy to spell, at SKILLZ Worldwide, and it's skills with a Z, SKILLZ worldwide.com, or you can find me on Facebook. I keep getting 5,000 friends. I don't know if I'm there yet, but I'm constantly having to delete. So this morning in my hotel room, I was going through and I made space. Hit me up on Facebook or at Melody Lee Johnson on Instagram. Those are the three platforms, depending on how you like to communicate.
Love it. Well, guys, this has been an incredible day. Thank you so much for coming, Melody. I really appreciate you being here.
For sure.
Being on this podcast. Hey, if you haven't hit that like button, do it now and hit subscribe so you can see more podcasts just like this next time on the Jennifer Waters Podcast.